So, Bruce, you travel all over the world and have attended, you said, 4 years worth of events over the past, 10 years, right? Is that what I heard or so?
Probably 15, but yeah, it's a lot.
Okay. Fair enough. So, one of the things that we want to ask people is, how do they choose which conferences to go to? So how do you choose which conferences to attend?
Yeah, so I obviously I can't attend all the conferences. I had one person who said he was going to try doing what I do, so he was going to like try and take on all the conferences I did. But he didn't sleep well on the plane, and he didn't sleep well in hotels, and he was getting too sick, and I couldn't do it. So I have to pace myself. I can't take on too much. I can't get to a point where my family is like, oh, this is getting out of control. So usually I try and highlight the larger conferences that where my attendance is kind of expected, because most other community members are going to be there, and it's good to invest in them and spend time with them and do stuff with them. And then there are the smaller conferences where, and the one coming up in Malta in April is one of them, where it's kind of a small conference, a new conference. And if I was there, it would help to advance that conference and help to make it a success, because Bruce is going to be there. He's going to have this material. And that means it's probably worth going to, even if I've never heard of it before. So those are probably the two extremes. The other two criteria are basically conferences that are either near me physically in Philadelphia, or conferences where there's a couple of them next to each other, where there's like we have one in Stockholm, and then 2 days later we have it in Paris, right?
Okay.
So that would be a logical one where you could kind of do two of them together. And then finally, where my employer EDB has a lot of customers, that would be a case where that would kind of tip the needle, and I kind of limit it to about 90 days of travel a year. I actually track it. My website has a little chart, and you can kind of see how many days of travel for each year. And I know when I go over about 100, like the wheels just start to come off at home, and I start disliking travel. So I really have to cap it at about 25% of the year. Okay. And that's kind of where I know I need to be. I did 110 one year, and I really would not like to go back to that, because I just
so it's really the 10-15 day difference does make a difference in lifestyle.
You would think if you do 90, how could an extra 20? But the problem is you don't have enough downtime between, and I typically take 2-3 week trips. So I'll be going. I had a 30-day last year. I got a 26-day. I'm leaving for tomorrow. So you're gone for almost a month, and then you really need some recover time to do all the stuff you normally do at home when you're not working, which is not happening, right? And then you need to reinvest in the family, and you need to attend events, and you need to go see your parents, and you go to church and do all that stuff that normally you would have been doing if you had been home. And when you get over the 100, then I think you're then starting to travel. You really haven't kind of missed travel enough yet. And now when you put your foot on the plane, you're like, oh, I'm not really looking forward to this. And if you're not looking forward to it, like, it's only going to get worse. You just started, right? And you got 26 days ahead of you.
Yeah. So Bruce, you also have been part of committees that have to choose content for conferences, correct?
Right.
So maybe give those who are looking to speak at a conference an idea of what you look for in terms of topics, or, what you're looking for in those proposals that might trigger getting accepted.
Yeah. So you have to break it up. So you have to look at what type of conference it is. Sometimes you don't know, but usually a conference should know, or we're a business-oriented conference, right? Or we're a manager-oriented conference, or we're a vendor-oriented conference, or if we're a technical conference, are we a conference for DBAs? Are we a conference for developers? Are we a conference for internals developers, right? Are we a conference for architects? And then at the far end, you have sort of the hobbyist-oriented conferences, right? Which would be that are more interested in developing personal relationships than actual technology or business needs. Not saying that's wrong, but the driver there is not necessarily technology. The driver, the technology is a catalyst for developing a community relationships. So then again, you have to, once you figure out what type of conference or what people you want to attract, then you're going to want a set of speakers who kind of have that layout, and you're going to want some speakers that you know are going to be good, right? That you pretty much know that's a known quantity. And then you're also going to want some new people who maybe have never spoken before or are regional to that industry, that area. So if it's in Malta, you're going to have some people from Malta speak. Or, we were in, I'm going to India and tomorrow, and we're going to have, a good number of Indian speakers, because those Indian speakers are going to resonate with the audience in a way that I'm not going to resonate. Right. So you're kind of looking for speaker experience at a certain level. You want some seasoned people, you want some new people. In terms of topics, you want to kind of keep it narrow mostly. Mm-hmm. If you're doing DBA, you're going to kind of stay in that lane. You're going to throw one or two ones in, particularly maybe a funny one if you're lucky, or something kind of oddball. But normally you're going to kind of stay in that lane. And if you try and do a multi-track, then you're going to need to do a good job of labeling. Okay, this is the DBA track. This is the developer track. This is the sort of hobbyist track or the hacker track. Because I've seen some conferences that don't make that distinction. They just kind of mix everything up together. And the experience of the users, like they're in the room, they're like, this isn't really what I'm wanting. In terms of looking at the material, obviously having a record, I've seen some criteria where conferences will now ask, can you send us a recording of you speaking, right? Or we had a conference in Armenia in December, and the challenge there was, what's the English proficiency of the individuals? Because they wanted to do primary in English. It was a Russian sort of sponsored conference, even though it was in Armenia. They got some people who weren't as proficient, and they were kind of surprised. The organizers were kind of surprised, well, how did that happen? And what do we need to do to filter that? But that was their first conference. So they're just that's a new angle to them. Up until then, everything was in Russian, except for people like me who would get translated. So there's always something there's something different that you're looking for. But when you write the abstract, I usually you want a topic that's you want the title to be clear about what it's about. I've seen a bunch of ones where I'm at a conference, I read and I'm looking at the title, I'm like, I have no idea what that's about. Well, that's cute, but I got 3 other talks I could go to, and this one, I have no idea what it's about. Even sometimes read the description, I can't figure out what it's about. So yeah, usually simple is better. And just try and use as few words as possible. A lot of times I just try and be very specific about what I'm going to cover, and try and make the title maybe cute, but not unclear. Because if you make it too cute, then people only have 3 seconds. They're going to decide if this is good or not. And that's usually an issue.
All right. Well, thanks, Bruce, for that. Appreciate giving your advice on events.
Great.